Good morning and welcome to What Should I Spend on Marketing? This is going to be a look at the kind of ad spend you can expect to have across your marketing channels and some ideas on how to calculate what that spend may be, but not just calculate the spend, but looking at things like return on investment, return on ad spend, and cost per acquisition. Does this mean nothing to you? It's okay. All will be revealed, all will be explained as we open up this particular one. Let's share that screen and get underway. Let's start off with a quote from Henry Ford, who said that stopping advertising to save money is like stopping your watch to save time. Some wise words for old Henry. He has a few things that weren't so savory to say, but that's one quote that's carried on really, really well. The idea of stopping advertising to save money is pretty much like saying, well, I'm not just going to save money, I'm going to save ever having to serve another client again. Stopping advertising or any kind of marketing activity is almost like a suicide watch for business. It means that you need to understand that without any sort of new development of advertising or development of your marketing going forward, that you have no hope of actually having new customers come to you because they won't know that you exist. This morning is going to cover off how to work out what your cost per acquisition should be when it comes to getting new customers. A bit of an idea, I guess, of whether you are spending too much or too little when it comes to your marketing, calculating things like return on ad spend, and we'll look at some ideas where there might be some either live examples from people who are on the Zoom call this morning, where we'll look at some of the ideas about how to fix their broken marketing spend so that it starts to work better for them. And then also looking at some people who then will have the opposite problem, fixing their broken marketing so that they are, if they're spending too much or too little, and getting that to work as well. If there's no volunteers that are going to stand up for this morning, I've got plenty of examples of clients that I've worked with that I won't identify by name, but we'll look at their industry and what some of the guidelines are for them moving forward. This is brought to you by Business Station and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program, sponsored by the Australian Government, delivered in Western Australia by Business Station, in Queensland by Regional Development Australia Brisbane, and in the Northern Territory by Treaty Business Consulting. This is live on Zoom right now. So for those of you who have lined up live this morning, you can put your questions in the Q&A or over in the chat window. I'll be monitoring both of those. If you're watching on YouTube after the initial live recording, please just whack those comments down below and we'll be able to answer those when we get notified of them. Just might take us about 24 hours to get back to some of those, although I do try to watch them very, very carefully. Now, if you did miss this live, you can watch it on either the Business Station or Dante St. James channels. So either of those two channels, Business Station or Dante St. James, will get you this particular one. If you go to my channel, please like, share, subscribe, all those sort of things, and hit the bell notifications to make sure you are let known when there's something new that's coming through. If you want to see some more stuff beyond just my mug and you want to see a few other people and what they've got to say, you can go to the Business Station channel and follow that as well. Same deal. Subscribe, hit the bell to get those notifications. A little bit about me and my background. My name is Dante St. James, based out of Darwin in the Northern Territory. That's a Northern Territory flag there behind me. Just drop my shoulder so you can see it. Yep, kind of. I work with my own business called Clickstarter. I've got about three or four other businesses now that I work through, but the one that's relative to this particular conversation is Clickstarter. I also work as a new business mentor for the New Business Assistance with Niece program, delivered by My Pathway in Northern Queensland, Tasmania, Western Australia, and the Northern Territory as well. And I work through Google's Digital Springboard program, delivering training for those who haven't had much to do with the digital world before. Through Treaty Business Consulting, I'm serving government and non-government companies throughout the Northern Territory, North Queensland and WA as well. And through Facebook, I'm just about to go on a bit of a tour with them in the next couple of weeks to help small businesses to get more out of the Facebook family of apps. That includes Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger and WhatsApp as well. Now, the problem we've got to identify this morning is not just that you need to do marketing. It's that when it comes to advice that's given about how much to spend in marketing, it's often leveled around lots of very general numbers, very general ideas. So we're talking about people saying, oh, you should spend 10% of revenue, or if you're doing startup, it should be 25% of revenue, and it needs to be organic only. You shouldn't spend anything at all. Spend nothing on marketing. Spend more, spend less. Do it only on digital. Do it only on TV. Do it on radio. It depends on who you're asking, what kind of advice you're going to get on what you should be spending on your marketing. So this morning we'll dispel some of those myths and give you some numbers that are a bit more reasonable, particularly within Australia, and give you some ideas of where you might be able to get some help with that kind of thing. Ultimately, how much you spend on your marketing will depend on your products and the volumes that you're selling of those products. So there's no one set amount of money. I'm not even going to give you one set, what we call it, a set percentage is the word I was looking for, on what that should be either. If I was to give you a set percentage or a set number, then you would take that, make it work, and then go, well, that didn't work for me. Because ultimately it does depend on what the cost of your products are. So whether you're selling something at $2,000 a go or whether it's 25 cents a go, and then the amount of volume of that you need to sell to make your living. So we're going to look at a few examples, and this is the coaching example. So my three coaches here are Amanda, Nilesh, and Suri. They're all fictional people, just stock photos of people here. They're all different lifestyle coaches. So let's just call them life coaches. Now they charge all different amounts for what they do. They have different volumes of the amount of people that they see every week or every month, and they all have different requirements of how much they need to make every month. In fact, their very, very different approaches probably reflect the fact that they're at different stages of their journey as to becoming a life coach. So let's look at Amanda first. Amanda charges $80 per consultation. She's doing an average of 4 of those per week. Now, to keep herself going, she has a roughly about 2 new clients every month to grow that business out. Now, at the moment, she's losing 2 clients a month too. So those 2 new clients every month are going a long way to helping her to retain her income. She currently spends $350 a month on marketing. So we can calculate through that 80 consults a week at 4 a week at 4.3 weeks in every month. That's based over the average over 12 months. Then we know that her revenue is roughly $1,376 per month. Not huge, but also not to be laughed at. It's a nice little bit of money. Now, we also know that if she's making $1,376, and she's spending $350 on her marketing, that the percentage she's spending of revenue to get those clients is 25%. So a quarter of every dollar, so 25 cents out of every dollar, is going into marketing. We would call this a relatively high percentage of revenue when it comes to getting those clients in. When she's spending $350 a month just to get $1,376 of revenue, it seems like she may be paying a little bit too much of her revenue amount in order to get new clients. Now, it may be that her cost per acquisition is quite high. It's costing her at 2 clients a month and $350 of marketing, $175 to attract a new client. Now, bear in mind that client may do 1 consult a week, or they may do 4. So it may be the difference between that client giving a $80 return on a $175 cost per acquisition. So she's doing 4 of these a week. We don't have any indication whether she gets those 2 new clients per month to be with her every week, or whether they just represent 2 sessions in that month. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that her clients don't see her more than once a month. In most coaching senses, you don't see a coach or speak to a coach more than monthly. It allows the coach to have a lot more different, different sources of income. And the more clients you have, the less reliant you are on the ones you do have, and less vulnerable you are to losing those clients. So at $80 per consult, 4 of those a week, we're saying that her 2 new clients only bring her what's the equivalent of $160 per month, and it's costing her $350 every month to get them. She's spending more to attract these new clients, and she's making out of those clients in their initial month. Now, that could be a loss leader, and I certainly do those myself, a loss leader that allows her to attract someone to her, but then it doesn't actually, they don't make it, she doesn't make any money out of those until the next month. In fact, at that cost per acquisition a month of two coming in at $350 between them, then it's going to take her 3 months before she's made any money out of those people if she sees those people every month. Now, for a low value business, such as $80 per bit of her business, that's a lot of time to be waiting for money to be made. That's taking too long. 3 months to make any kind of profit out of these particular clients is a long time to wait. So Amanda's got some problems. She really should review her consult costs. I think she's going in too cheap. And I think she's probably spending a little bit too much on her marketing. It'd be more worthwhile if that $350 is bringing in 5 new clients per month, because you break up that cost between 5 of those clients, not 2. So at 2, it's $175. But if it's a lot more, if it's say 5, well, let's get out the calculator and have a look. So we go, if it's $350 a month that she's spending on marketing, I'm going to divide that by 5, and it comes down to $70. So $80 per consult, she's at least making $10 off each one of those new consults in that first month. In the second month, everything that she makes is profit. So she's not still trying to pay back the cost of getting that person in. Our second guy is Nilesh. Now, Nilesh charges $150 per consult. He's been doing this a bit longer, has a bit of reputation, isn't going out so hard to try and find clients. In fact, he is looking at 5 new clients a month. So he has a bit more capacity and probably a bit more turnover than what Amanda does. And he also spends the same as what Amanda does on marketing. Now, if we go back to Amanda, we can see that she does 4 consults a week. Nilesh does 5 consults a week. So his revenue is significantly more than Amanda's. At 5 new clients a month, that then, because he's spending the same amount on marketing to get those 5 new clients, is significantly less than Amanda's. At 25%, Amanda's is very high. But at 11% of revenue that Nilesh has got, then it's a heck of a lot less than 25%, because he's got the same amount, but broken down over 5 new clients, and he can handle one more client per week than what Amanda can as well. And he's making more out of each of those clients, that the moment he gets one of those clients in. So we said at 5, right? So it's what, 5 new clients at $350 divided by 5 is $70. So he is already on the very first consult at $150. So 150 minus 70 is 80. He's already making the same as Amanda takes on the second month in the first month. And then it's all profit in the second. So he makes $80 per client in the first week, and then makes $150 of the client in the next consult. So his cost per acquisition is considerably lower at just $70 per client on board. So if you only got $70 coming out, not $150 coming out, you're immediately making some money. So what we'd say here is that Nilesh has got a pretty good combination going on. 11% of revenue, good solid revenue for the month, a fairly decent cost per acquisition. He's doing pretty well. Now, let's look at Suri. Suri is a little bit cheaper than Nilesh. She's $120 per consultation, but she's pumping out 10 of these a week, so 2 a day over a 5-day week. And she still takes on that 5 new clients a month. But she's spending a lot more on her marketing. In fact, probably twice the amount. Instead of $350 a month, she's spending $770 per month. Now, it's $120 she's taking per consultation, but it's costing her $154 for every new client that she needs to onboard. So in that way, she's actually making a loss on her first consultation in much the same way Amanda is. While she looks very impressive at making 10 of these a week, and she's attracting 5 new clients every month, and she's at a fairly reasonable rate of $120, her revenue being at $51.60 per month, that looks pretty impressive. but it's about 15% of her revenue is being spent on marketing. If she was spending $350, that would be a significantly different number. She'd be looking at much, much lower in her percentage of revenue, and her cost per acquisition will be significantly less. But Suri has found as she's had to try to get more of these, to fill out 10 of these a week and attract 5 new clients every month, it's costing her a little bit more all the time to get that on. She may have even found when she first started advertising that 350 was enough to attract those clients. But now she's like, no, I actually have to get people in and make nothing of them on that first message, on that first consult, in order to get them to stick. Now, whether or not she keeps her clients for longer than what either Amanda or Nilesh do is not really part of the scope of what we're looking for. But we can tell that she's doing pretty well. It's just that she loses money on the first consultation she does. Perhaps what she'd be better off doing is offering a free consultation, because she's losing money anyway. So the idea of having a charge for a consultation, she'd be losing $154. And that's not really that bad compared to what she's already losing. She's already losing, well, like that's 154. She's getting 120 for that. So 120 minus 154 is minus $34. So if she really is willing to take another $34 hit, she could essentially just say, I'm going to do this for nothing in this first one because I'm making nothing for it. Or she may find that reducing that marketing cost may actually be a bit better for her, and finding some more organic ways that she can find to get hold of new clients to come in. So what should you do? How should you work out what yours is going to be? Well, first of all, we need to work out your cost per acquisition. So we saw that Suri and Amanda and Nilesh had their cost per acquisitions wildly varying depending upon the volume that they can do, the amount that they need to bring in every month, and what they're charging per unit. So you find that, you might by buying a hamburger at McDonald's may cost you $8.20, but a similar hamburger in a gourmet shop may cost $25. The law of volume tells you that McDonald's is going to make a killing because they have a greater volume of people coming through at their price point than what the local gourmet burger place does. They've got a lot less people buying it, and they've got a lot less people coming through. So your cost of acquisition is basically going to be spent on marketing. And your marketing in the startup stage generally runs on average. Now, this is not an instruction. This is just a measurement of what the general spend tends to be in this startup stage of a business, around 12 to 20% of gross revenue. So before your taxes, before you pay everything out, everything that comes in, about 12 to 20% of that goes to marketing. And that's even including before taxes paid. If you're established in your business, that then drops. So it's around the top end now becomes the bottom end. So an established business will spend between 6 and 12% of their gross revenue on marketing activities. Now, that all sounds fine, but what if it's quite possible that this is the case, you don't actually have any revenue? If you don't have any revenue, ultimately, you shouldn't really even be spending anything. And it whole becomes a matter of time versus money. You either spend time doing organic and networking activities, going to networking events, going into Facebook groups, going to events that are out in public, going and posting lots of stuff on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all those platforms, producing YouTube videos of your own, things that are not going to cost you advertising money, but they tend to cost you time. Or you go and spend everything. So you just go, you know what? I am just not going to bother with this. I'm going to go and spend. That's all I'm going to do, just spend money. Now, when it comes to when using paid marketing, so it comes to the point of spending on that marketing, we've got all those guidelines, that 12 to 20% or that 6 to 12%. Think of marketing and the paid marketing as something that amplifies things you're already doing for free. So whilst we say in the startup stage of a business that you should be spending between 6 and 12%, or that the average is spending 6 to 12%, if you're making no revenue, You should be spending no money on marketing. Now that sounds mad, and this is not the way that most contemporaries do it. They go, you should be pouring money into this. But if you've got no money there, you can't spend the money, right? You can't spend money going to places where there is no money to spend on that. You can't buy advertising if you don't have money to pay for it. So then you look at it and go, well, what can I do instead? And that's where you do all that organic activity. You're spending money on posting to Facebook, posting to LinkedIn, going to groups in Facebook, going to Facebook Marketplace, maybe things that are costing you very, very low amounts, like setting up a market stall. Apart from going and putting ads on TV, set up a market stall. Do giveaways to charities that are going to give you some kind of good news. Send off samples or something. Whilst that's still costing you some money to do that, at least it's not costing you ad money. Once you start spending ad money, you have to have the cash to pay for it. They're not going to let you pay on promises. Like, it's not a consignment thing where you say, here you go, for everything that I sell, I'll pay you a commission based upon the ads that you've played. When you go to the TV and radio station, when you go to Facebook and Google, they want money. They don't want promises, they want money. So once you get going and you've got some revenue coming in, let's just say you got $1,500 of revenue, right? You may have to spend a very high proportion of that $1,500 to amplify what's already working. And this is where we get in a bit of a mistake when we start marketing. We start saying that we need to spend lots and lots and lots of money on things that don't work. But the reality is what we're doing is spending money on the things that already are working. This sounds like a paradox, because why would you spend money on something that's already working? What you do is to amplify that thing that's working. So things like boosting of posts on Facebook is really powerful when it's used on posts that are already doing well. If you're trying to boost something that's not doing well organically, all you're doing is trying to ram something down people's throats that they do not have any interest in. They're not interested in seeing that content. They don't want anything to do with that content, yet you're trying to force it down their mouth by forcing it in front of them. And that's not a good experience. It's not a positive experience, and nobody likes to have things force-fed to them. It's a reason why we've slipped away from TV and radio so much, is because it plays so many ads that we have zero interest in any of those businesses or those products or services. So when it comes to that initial spend, yes, it may seem like it's a higher proportion of spend that's going to happen at a lower amount of revenue. Could be up to 25% or 20% even, when it comes to how much you spend of that revenue coming in. So you may be spending, of that $1,500, you may be spending $300 of that just getting yourself established on marketing. But don't just spend it on making ads. Look at the things that you've done organically that got you to this point and boost those. The things that have worked really well, they've got lots of engagement, lots of attention. Boost those things, put money in behind those things, because what it allows you to do is to take that momentum and amplify it. You're not trying to start from scratch here, remember. You've already done that. You already did that with your organic stuff. You're amplifying what's already happening. You're putting more coal onto the train to make it go faster, or you're putting more wattage into the electric vehicle to make it go faster. Then when you reach that stage that you are quite well established and you don't really need to spend a lot more anymore, because you've really just got your momentum and you've got word of mouth going around, so the free stuff's working really well, then you go, okay, now we look at it and go, we can drop back the proportion of our spend. So whilst the actually amount will go up, so you're going from, say, $1,500 of initial revenue that you're making, and you'll spend about $300 of that to get yourself going. You may drop that down from 20% to around about 10% of revenue. So what you'll be doing under the $20,000 level per month, you may spend a very, very solid $2,000 of that. But that's a lot less than the 20% we were selling before. At 20%, we were spending $4,000 per month. At 10%, under $20,000, the proportion is going to work out to be about $2,000. So it's much, much more sensible. That's because you've already got momentum. Like I said before, you've already got word of mouth. You've already got people doing recommendations and reviews. You may even have a little bit of momentum from SEO on Google, and people be able to find you easily. Or you may have other advertising that's going on that seems to be doing really, really well. Either which way, no spend when there's no revenue. A higher proportion of spend when there's a bit of revenue, and a lower proportion of spend when there's fairly consistent and established revenue coming through. So how do we know if we're spending too much or we're spending too little on our marketing? This comes from a matter of what your targets are. And the targets you're looking at are, how much revenue do you want to make per month? Do you have a certain amount in mind that you would like to make in order to make your life really cool, to expand your lifestyle, to move to a bigger house, to buy a premises for your business to be in? What are the targets you need to get to make that all happen? Then you have to work out, how many sales does that equate to? Remember, you're selling a product and it costs you a certain amount to produce that product. So how many sales do you need to make in order to make your revenue get to that point where it's supporting the life you want to live? And then we look at, how many leads does it take to get to that? Because not everyone who comes across your website is going to buy your stuff. Likewise, not everyone who puts in an inquiry or asks for a quote is going to select your quote or select your proposal to deliver the solution they're after. So let's just say, for example, that I want to make $15,000 per month. That's roughly 15 sales at $1,000 each per month. Now, my history of selling, hypothetically, is that I close 1 in every 5 presentations of sales that I do. So people come into my shop, and of the 5 people that came in that shop today, I sold 1. Now I need to get 1 of those every day for 15 days to make that $15,000 per month, which means I need 75 people to come into that shop so that I can close 15 of those. 15 times 5 is 75, remember? So if I want to make $15,000 a month, I need to attract 75 people to walk through the door, and I have to be good enough to close a deal at $1,000 with at least 1 out of 5 or 15 of that 75. Now, that may not sound like that much of a challenge if they're already coming through the door, but let's just say they're not coming through the door. Let's just say these are people on Facebook, and we need to be able to attract people who are willing to pay me $1,000 once off or in perpetuity every month, doesn't really matter. I want to track that person in. I need 15 of those every month to make the target that I want to make. That means I need to bring in 75 inquiries through Facebook on my website or a landing page or wherever it is I'm sending people from my Facebook ads. And I then need to be assured that I'm going to close, a good 1 out of 5 or 15 out of those 75. Now, the economics don't work out the same online as what they work out in person. When you've got someone coming in live to the place where you're running your business, excuse me for that. Didn't want you to hear that horrible noise. When I've got people coming into my shop, I've got a much greater opportunity to sell something to them because I can demonstrate, I can use my sparkling personality or whatever it is I need to get them interested enough to buy that product or to buy that service. So what I get is, yeah, sure, I might close 1 out of 5 of those. But when people are making inquiries online, there's a certain anonymity to it. People don't feel as obliged, and their intent is a lot lower. So what I may find is, to get that 15 sales, I may only close 1 out of 10 inquiries that come in, because online people are a bit more fickle. They've got more research at their fingertips. They're less necessarily intent on buying that thing from you right there and then, like they are in a shop. So they're coming along Facebook. I need to now have a lot more leads. I need now 150 leads to come through in order to make that 15 sales, because I'm only closing 1 in every 10 of these sales opportunities. So therefore, I need to spend a little bit more to get that many more leads. If I'm only spending, let's just say if I need $1,000, $15,000 per month, and I need to get that many people in, then I've got to work out that it's going to cost me more to get more people interested in Facebook than what it would be to get them into the shop. Now, this can be the opposite as well. If you've got a particularly inconvenient or discreet product and that people have to go into a shop, they're less willing to go in the shop and more willing to buy something online. It's packaging discreet, or it's less effort for them to go to. So you've got lots of different opportunities there. to show why that will work, why it won't work, and how much the difference is going to be between, say, spending on Facebook or spending to get people to come to your shop. But where do these leads come from? What are you using in a sense of a media or a source of where these leads could come from? Now, they could come from anywhere. YouTube, television, Google, radio, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, LinkedIn, posters, sides of buses, bus shelters, billboards, you name the medium, they could come from anywhere. But those medium are all going to cost different amounts of money. And if you're doing a multimedia approach to your advertising or to your marketing, you would know that not everyone comes from the same place. So I'm going to show you an example of how it works in my business or one of my businesses. So I'm aiming for about 30 leads a month, about one a day. So if those leads currently come on an average of 5 from YouTube every month, 5 from Facebook, 10 from workshops that I am hosting, like this one, like this webinar, or like real live workshops. 1 will come from Instagram every month, 2 come from LinkedIn, and 7 will come directly from my website. So they find something in Google and they turn into an inquiry. So I know that of those 30 leads is a pretty good breakdown of where they're all coming from. I also know, because I speak to my clients, of how they found that and where they came from. So I know that out of all those leads, that equates to a cost on those platforms. Now, some of those platforms are just me putting stuff out there. YouTube, LinkedIn, website, Instagram. I don't actually pay to put myself out on those platforms. But I do spend on this one business $700 a month on Facebook ads. And I also spend $1,000 in catering and room hire for the workshops per month. Now, it doesn't cost me anything to do this webinar, apart from paying for the electricity, the air conditioning, the cost of the internet connection. Sometimes I might need a new microphone to get everything working right. So therefore we go, okay, the highest cost areas for me to get leads from are Facebook and workshops, which happen to be 2 of the biggest sources of leads as well. From that cost of the advertising, I'm then able to work out what my cost per acquisition is. I know that it costs me nothing in terms of dollars to get my leads from YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and the website. They're also my smallest sources of leads too. So the fact that I don't spend anything on them, but I still get something back from them at all is a good thing. Oh, excuse me. It's very dusty and smoky in where I am today, so please excuse me if I do cough a little bit. From Facebook, of those leads that I get in through them, so I get 5 per month from Facebook, it costs me about $140 to attract that particular client from Facebook. From my workshops, I get 10 of those per month. I spend about $1,000 a month on hosting and catering and putting, in a hotel conference room, my workshops. So it's going to cost me $100 cost per acquisition for each one of those clients. So I know that the money I'm spending on advertising through those particular channels is offset by the fact that I need to then attract them into something. Now, the amount that someone will spend, that's a further cost that I look at. Now, I know for a fact that my YouTube ones at the moment are delivering crazy value for me, because the people who are coming from YouTube, and there's only maybe 1 or 2 a month at the moment, are coming in and they're very high value. They are getting things like websites, which can be up to $5,000 each. So the return on investment of time on YouTube is definitely worth it for me. The return on investment for my Facebook, though, even though it cost me $140 to attract someone in, the average person just does an ASBAS Digital Solutions once-off session. Now, the problem with that is that I don't get paid $140 for that session. So I'm therefore losing on that. The good thing is, though, that almost all the people who do come in that way will equate to getting a second, third, or even 4th session. So even though I'm taking a loss on that first session with them, it's cost me $140. It's paying me less than that. I'm still able to make that up in the next ones. I'm not having to pay to attract them to get in a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, or even 10th consultation, but I'm still getting paid the same for it. So in the swings and roundabouts, in the bigger picture, I'm actually making really good money out of those people, even though at the first consultation, it doesn't look like it. With my workshops at $100 each, people generally attend most, excuse me, I got hiccups now. Everything's going wrong today. Coughing, hiccups, all sorts of things, snotty noses. A $100 cost per acquisition of someone coming from a workshop comes from the fact that they don't pay anything to, be at that workshop. But the average person tends to come in for the workshop doing the same thing as they do from Facebook. They'll get an ASBAS Digital Solutions session that I'm making actually like a almost break even. So for each one of those sessions, I'm at a break even amount, which is great because it's not costing me, but it's also not making me anything. It's just costing me time. But in almost every one of those cases, I get at least a second or third consultation from them, in which I then make back that money. So I go from making a loss from the source coming through from Facebook to being neutral and not making a loss, being break even from the workshop source. And then I make a profit on them on the second and the third time. So I will get $100 from the first time, which is a break even, but I'll then make a further $200 from them based on 100. So if I spend $100, get 300 back. That's a pretty good return. If I was to bet on a horse and I got 3 times return, that's not too shabby work. You do that over, say, 50 of those consultations every month, and you've got a pretty good little business going. But then I make it up again in Instagram, LinkedIn, and the website, where I know that my Instagram referrals are not particularly good payers. They're often looking for something for free. LinkedIn are looking for advisory sessions. So that works out around about the same as Facebook and the workshops. But people who come in through my website have a very different level of intent. These people are generally wanting to buy things like a website, like ongoing training, like booking me for special workshops. Now, this kind of approach then means that I'm able to make a lot more out of them. So the Instagram, LinkedIn, not too great, but the website leads, I make a lot out of those. So the cost per acquisition is nothing apart from the time it took me to build the website, because I did build that myself. So are you confused yet? Probably. Let's scale this up. Let's just say that based on my business now, that I want to make $100,000 per month on this business. So based on that, I've decided that I need to attract 20 clients, spending an average of $5,000 a month, right? That turns out to be $100,000. Now, at the moment, it's costing me $1,700 a month to gain 5 new clients per month. All things remaining equal, I can then expect that I'm going to attract 15 extra new clients at the same cost. So if it's taking me $1,700 to get 5, I want to add on another 15 of those to make it to 20. So it's going to cost me $6,800 a month to gain 15 extra new clients per month. Now, if I look at my percentage calculator, what I'm now starting to look at as a percentage of revenue, we're starting to look at a very different number to what I was looking at before. So let's just say that we're looking at $6,800, and 100,000 is the total I want to make. So 6,800 is what percent of 100,000? It gives me a percentage of 6.8%. Now, remembering that it costs you a lot more in proportion, in percentage wise, to be doing your marketing early in your business journey. So that's telling us that we're spending often up to 20%, 25% even on attracting new customers to us through our marketing. In this case, what I'm doing is spending 6.8% of that, which is a relatively low amount, even though $6,800 does sound a little bit scary. Trust me, I've spent a lot more on that in marketing on a monthly basis on very, very many occasions. So it's telling me that to scale up is not costing me proportionally as much as it costs to actually get growth from a standstill position. Going off momentum costs you less as a percentage than what going off, say, so from a completely dead stop. You're starting from scratch, you need to get going. That costs you a lot more to get going proportionally to your revenue, what it does to scale up something that's already working. That's why a lot of the times grants and investments only will come in for businesses that actually are already doing well. That's because they're very easy to take a business that's doing well and scale it up to a business that is quite phenomenal. What it's also telling me is that I'm not going to grow to that $100,000 a month business at my current spend of $1,700. I am spending too little now to support my growth goals. To get that higher, I need to spend more. $6,800 may get me there. I may find, though, that to accelerate that growth even faster, I may have to spend more. Some of that may be free activities that I do. Others of that might be paid ads. Now we're going to look at the concept of return on ad spend. This is basically looking at how much you're making on your ad spend. So if you're spending a certain amount on your ads, you want to make sure you at least get that back as a return on what you spent. So you need to ask yourself that when you do these ad campaigns and you're doing your boosts and you're doing your ad manager, or you're doing TV, radio, or working with billboards or the sides of buses and taxis, are you covering your costs? And if that's a yes, then you're in a pretty good position to continue. But if that's a no, you've got to consider whether your advertising spend is actually worth it. A lot of times I know I run things that are called like a loss leader. So it's often I'll sell something which I'm going to make a loss on, but it helps me to get more access to something else that I make a lot more money on. So when it comes to return on ad spend, we look at anything from 0 and below as a negative or bad return on ad spend. So you're spending $1 and you're actually not making anything back. That's pretty bad because you're essentially that dollar has been wasted. Likewise, if you spend $1 and it actually costs you money to do or fulfill something that you otherwise would get back completely free. So for instance, I spend $1 advertising, then it costs me $1.50 to serve that client. I'm then losing $1.50 plus the original dollar I spent, $2.50. So then it's it's actually a really bad return on investment because I'm actually like a 1.5% loss or 1.5% return on ads, minus 1.5%, sorry, return on ad spend. If my return on ad spend is neutral, I spend nothing, I make nothing, or I spend $5 and I make $5, that's actually a bad thing, even though it's a neutral because you have spent a certain amount and made that same amount back. So you haven't lost anything. You've also lost time. You've got to get used to the idea as a business owner, you've got to pay yourself for your time at the rate that you deserve to be paid at. There's the reason why we don't have jobs is because we don't like what we're paid in the job and we don't believe we're paid appropriately to the effort that we put in and the worth of our time. So if you look at a neutral return on ad spend, you're actually then looking at a bad return on ad spend. The only kind of ad spend, return on ad spend that's good is one that's above 1. So if you're spending $1 and you're making $1.01, that's positive. It's in the green just, but it's still in the green. You ultimately want to make more than that. So how does this work in the real world? What kind of ad spend returns can you expect on industry averages on different kinds of media? On television, that could be $1.75 on average that you're going to make back. $1.75 back for every dollar that you spend. It doesn't seem to set the world on fire. It's certainly not that 10x returns that a lot of those Grant Cardone and Gary Vaynerchuk kind of people talk about when they're trying to get everyone riled up of what they should be making online. $1.35 on radio, it's a little bit less effective than television in terms of return on ad spend, but that largely is because it's also costs less to advertise on TV on average than it does on radio, particularly in regional areas. The better return on ad spend you're getting is when you go to digital platforms. Now, the average is about $3.65, but bear in mind that most people who advertise on things like Facebook and Google have no idea what they're doing. They're just putting stuff out there and hoping for the best and not really even measuring whether they've been successful or not looking at their insights or analytics at all. So realistically, there's no real reason if you know what you're doing and you take time to strategically plan it out that you can make a much greater return on investment out of digital in terms of like 10 to 20 times. Instead of $3.65, you may be making $30.65 back on every ad dollar you're spending. It is actually possible to do that because of the scale and the cost of getting that scale and the targeting potential that comes out of digital. Whereas TV and radio is sending it all out to everybody, so that a lot smaller proportion of those people who are seeing or being exposed to your advertising are going to be appropriate for your product or you have an interest in it. Whereas if you do targeting on things like digital advertising, we're talking about Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google, Pinterest, anything that has targeted styles of advertising, then you're already skipping that queue and going straight to people who you know for a fact are interested in you. So let's look at a few examples. I've had if there is anybody in our live Zoom call right now who would like to give us a example of a business, I'll gladly take those. In the meantime, let's look at a few different examples of how I've seen people operating when it comes to return on ad spend and how much they actually spend on advertising. When I look at consultants, the danger with a consultant is they often selling time for money. And a consultant does not have 24 hours in a day to sell themselves in. They've got about 8. And given that consultations are quite emotionally, psychologically, and physically intensive, you have to actually be there and spend a lot of time working with someone. You may find that you might only be able to do 3 to 4 consultations a day before it absolutely exhausts you. I'm someone who does often up to 8 of them a day, and it kills me on those days, but I just have to get through work sometimes. A day like today, where I'm actually doing a lot more chilled out stuff, I'm doing more of an admin day than a consultation day today. It feels a little bit easier to work with. So consultants will usually find that because of this, they have to spend a little bit of a higher amount to get people in because they need to also charge a lot more for their time. So with Amanda, who was one of our examples earlier, where she was only making $80 per consultation, she was charging way too little for what's worth her time. In a month, she was only making, $1,270 or something like that. She needs to double that rate at least. So well up to like $160 an hour. Think about a plumber. A plumber is not going to come out to your house for $25. They're certainly not going to do it for $80 an hour. It's usually that more than $100 per hour because it costs time and money, and they need to feed kids and pay for mortgages and cars and petrol like any of us do. So the idea that you come in at a very low rate just to get volume is going to backfire on you anyway. And you're still going to have to spend the same amount of money to attract people. And the kind of people you're attracting at a low rate are generally low value people. You're not going to get much growth out of them. So you're going to be stuck with having to spend a lot of money on very few people who don't really want to actually spend much money on you. So in a consultant's case, you might find that you need to maybe double your rates to make it much more worthwhile, so that when you're spending a proportion on your ad spend, say 10 to 15%, that it's still reflected in a good profit that you're making because your per hour rate is quite high. Now, if you want to work less hours a day, you need to make more out of the hours that you are working. If you want to work more hours a day, then you've got to be willing to have a lower price point to attract more people in. There's only so many people who are willing to pay for consultants. So we've got to understand that it's going to cost us a little bit more, and we may be making a little bit less proportionally than what we would if we were selling it ourselves at a higher rate. Another example could be an electrician. So we'll talk about like a plumber there for a second. So electrician generally spends quite a high proportion again of what they do, but their hourly rate is generally a lot higher. You think of an electrician who comes out in the nighttime, could be making upwards of $350 per hour. So that case, because each job is quite short, their minimum cost would be, say, $350 an hour. So to get someone spending, $70, you spending $70 of advertising to get that one person in at $350 an hour is still a good return on ad spend. You're still going, okay, it cost me $70 to get that person, but I made $350 on them, or perhaps even more, depending on whether there was a longer service requiring more parts and you had a profit margin on those as well. So how much should an electrician spend? You usually find an electrician will spend around that 15 to 20% mark all the time. They try to bring that down, of course, but you'll find that as they get to those lower costs, which is generally daytime, so it's going to cost them a lot less to get to people during the day, they're also making a lot less per hour during the day. When they want to pay more to get onto the very competitive nighttime slot, plumbers are particularly special at this too. They'll find that they can then charge a lot more. So even though they might go from, say a cost per acquisition of say $30 during the day, that cost per acquisition may only be $25 at night, even though they're making a lot more out of that. They might be making, instead of $350, they might be making $450 per hour as well. Another example would be an online retailer. Now, online retailers generally don't have very high margins when it comes to their products. Their products range anything from a $5 widget through to a $300 dress. Not that much more value generally goes into things that are delivered online, unless they're things like coaching services, online courses, and the like. So let's look at the online retailer who's perhaps selling a lot of things at a value of about $40. Let's just say they're a very special kind of face mask that now that kills COVID on contact and somehow is better than other face masks. Now they might cost $40 per piece. It may cost you around about $4 to get somebody to buy one of those things. The beautiful thing is though, because it's a quite high volume, relatively low cost item, even though $40 for a face mask does sound like a lot, it's actually a relatively low cost in terms of what people spend online. So you may find that $4 it took to get someone to get and click on that and go to the site to buy that face mask is negated by the fact that they bought a face mask for every member of their 4-person family. So at $40 a piece, that's $160 for a $4 ad spend. So if we look at, okay, if we spent $4 and the ad spend and the total revenue you made from that was $160, it's a 2.5% ad spend proportion. You're making a lot back on that. And this is where online retailers have to look and go, they do maybe have to spend a little bit more, but realize their volumes of what's going to be bought should be higher. And there should be everything optimized on your site as a retailer to get people to spend more with you on more items more often. So you'll spend, might get that click for maybe 50 cents and someone's buying something for $5. Well, yeah, so maybe if they're buying it for $5 and it's a 50-cent spend to get them there, that's 10%, right? But if you're spending 50% and they buy that $5 thing and then they buy 10 other things at $5, so let's just say that's $55 worth of stuff, suddenly that return on ad spend is more like, well, so that proportion of ad spend for that cost of acquisition is like less than 1%. So you're spending a lot less to get a lot more. If you've got cheaper products, you've got the option of being able to use that click through that you're paying for to buy a lot more stuff. So then the proportion just gets lower and lower and lower. Wish, Amazon, they base all their advertising with Amazon and with, sorry, not with Amazon, with Google and with Facebook like this. It may only cost them 15 cents to get someone to go through to buy a 20-cent widget. But once they're there on their marketplace, they go, you're buying that 20-cent widget. You may also like this $1.50 widget and this $17 doodah and this $18 thingamajigabit. And then once you add it all up, they're spending $100 and it still just costs you half a cent to get them there to actually buy that thing. So the value is in all those upgrades and upsells. But if you're selling if you're selling a $3,000 course, then it's pretty hard to upsell someone to two $3,000 courses, unless they've got the money to burn, and that's how they work. Another example would be the Reiki practitioner. They will charge around about $100 per session. And so they need to go and understand how much it's going to cost them to get each one of those new people in. So to make $100, you would think you wouldn't want to spend any more than $10 trying to get that person in. The reality is though, because the amount of time and the low rate that Reiki practitioner is charging, $100 an hour is a fairly low rate for an hour's worth of work, then they'll find that they are getting a very high proportion of their revenue is spent on marketing. And they're looking at around about that 25, sometimes 30%. So they think, oh, well, it's okay. I don't have a lot of costs. I don't have oils. I don't have, a lot of fancy positions that I need to put people in. I don't have fancy furniture. I don't even have a clinic. I can do this remotely through the internet. It's all good. But they're not valuing the cost of their time. So to bring that down, that proportion down, that you're making a lot more money for a lot less work, then you need to pull up those rates. Even putting it up by $20 an hour, $120 an hour is going to bring you in a lot more and keep that ad spend proportion down a lot lower. It'll make a big difference, trust me. So what's next? You want to move further into understanding what your return on ad spend are, or you may look at your Facebook insights on your ads results and think you're not doing that well. Well, you can spend an hour with me, speaking of booking people in for an hour, or with any of our ASBAS digital solutions advisors across the 3 states of Western Australia, Queensland, and the Northern Territory. Now, if you've never had one of these consults before, your first one is $0. It's not going to cost you a cent. I still get paid, but it's not going to cost you anything. Your second consultation in Queensland, Western Australia, or the Northern Territory has a $44 charge with it, including GST. And then if you go for a third one and any after that, they're $66 each Australian. So this gives you the option to be able to go in there. Now, where do you go for all this? You go to asbas.com.au, and that will start that process for you. So you'll be able to sign up, get your free one. If you do not get a free one, please just let me know and I'll be able to organize that for you. Sometimes it makes mistakes, and sometimes it may be that you actually used one before, but you didn't realize you had. You might have got it as a free workshop or something. I'm happy to work with you to work that out. I'd like to thank you for joining me. This has been a very dry topic. It's something which I obsess about with spreadsheets everywhere to make sure that what I'm spending, so I'm spending $1,700 a month in advertising right now on Facebook and Google and other platforms. So I want to make sure I'm getting a good return on those. If you'd like to find out more about me or get in touch with me, that email address on screen, dante@treaty.com.au, is great. And I do invite you to chase me down on places like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, all of which are available and open for you to approach me on.